Today we're going over 5 tricks Commander players don't use enough.
I'm Mia, and I like relaxing in hot water.
I'm BZ. I like engaging in political trickery. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom, the place you should go to buy Magic the Gathering cards, because when you use the link in our description, it actually helps out the channel, keeps the lights on. I could show you what it's like without the lights, but it's a lot less interesting, so that helps keep us alive also.
They have singles, they have sealed product, they help Miso and Amber go to college. So please use the link below, it would mean a lot to us. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you use the code
NERDS
at checkout, you can save 5% of your real money tax dollars, and BZ will come into your walls in the middle of the night.
I guess I don't know if I can promise that. There's a chance. And Moxfield is a sponsor of this video, but not now. Somewhere mysterious. You can guess now where you think the mystery ad will be, but you will be lying if you said the right time, if that makes sense to you. Also, Patreon is a great way to support us directly. You can check out exclusive podcasts, gameplay, and other stuff that we just can't publish on YouTube. It is also a little bit... It's not rated PG-13. It's spicier, you know?
We will audit your decks, and maybe we'll include one F-bomb if you're lucky.
Oh, yeah, no. There might be, like, swear words. Nothing weird.
In your deck audit.
Yeah, no funny business otherwise. But also, Nitpicking Nerds Playmats are here, as this sign indicates, and you can buy them on Gamermats. There's a link in the description for that as well. If you want a Miso Displacer Kitten, Amber, Queen Meow Chessa, or Nitpicking Nerds logo, check it out. So we've got some tricks that we're going to go through here in this video to help you win more Commander games, help up your arsenal of tools to go to. And, you know, I'm going to say it right now, this video might get a little heated because we both have tricked each other multiple times with some of the tricks that we're about to mention.
BZ says tricks so many times, but these are little strategy type deals which play more towards the actual politics of the game and talking with your fellow players rather than the actual cards in your hand.
Yeah, we like talking about strategy just as much as we like talking about deck building, so this is going to be a strategy video. So the first one here, I wasn't really sure what to call it, so I'm going to go ahead and call it my 80-20 rule. This is that I accurately assess threats and provide helpful information to the table about 80% of the time. And then about 20% of the time, I'm just completely 100% selfish. So I sort of have a reputation in games for helping move the game along. You know, if somebody misses some damage, I'll say this, miss a trigger, I got this. It's like I just kind of am facilitating moving the game along. And also during that, about, let's say, 1 in 5 times, if I were to mention that something is a threat or something is a big problem, 20% of that, 1 in 5 times, I'm being a little selfish, and actually, I want it gone.
I feel like this is more helpful in the lower powered to mid powered as you go versus high powered, because there is a certain understanding in like CEDH in the super high powered that most people have to like fend for themselves. There's not as much political like, oh, you missed that, or oh, whatever. It's like you kind of have to like sit on your own. But in the lower to mid power games, or when people are newer, there is usually a reputation of being nicer and helping people out. But
I mean, that's true of all these tips, right? We're not CEDH, so none of these tips really matter in CEDH, but for the casual games, I think they definitely matter. I just think it's nice to like establish this sort of thing of like, yeah, I generally do just want to move the game along and help things out, but I can throw in a little political trickery. Why do I have to be 100,000% honest sometime? Why can't I bluff, or every once in a while throw in a, that thing that stops graveyards is really annoying. I think we should get it dead. Does anybody have a removal spell? And then I think there was a recent time I remember where I threw out one of these, 80-20s, and I was like, oh, this thing needs to go. And you killed it. And then I won the game next turn, and I was like, boom.
It's definitely an option. Sometimes it can be hurting your opponents just as much as it's hurting you, or maybe it's hurting you a little bit more, but they don't really need to know that. It's more of just like a, wow, this is a pain in my butt, and maybe it is for someone else. Maybe I can get them to use their removal instead.
Yeah, I think this is a good way to swing things in your favor just like a tiny bit every once in a while, get a little extra mileage out of it. I think it's fun to try to, not necessarily take everybody at their word 100% of the time, because they can make deals and they've got hidden information that I don't know about. So basically, whenever anyone says anything in Commander, there can be an ulterior motive. So I like taking advantage of that. I think you might not be doing that enough, and I think that could definitely help you win more games, is to just every once in a while call attention to something that you just would love to be dead.
I mean, that's part of Commander, right? You could be bluffing. You can just say like, oh, I think this is best that everyone like gang up on this person because this is a problem, when it might just be only a problem for you. That's just like a point of the game, I feel. If you're holding up one card and a few lands, you could say, yes, this is interaction, when it might just be a basic or something.
Have you used much of the 80-20 rule?
I definitely have deflected a little bit more, but I don't say can we kill that? I definitely say a lot of I think that's a really big problem. Or when you ask, like, do you have an answer? And I say, like, maybe. It depends. Because sometimes I do have an answer. It, like, depends because, like Vanishing Verse, for instance, monocolored permanent. That might be, like, a very questionable answer, So, but if you ask something like, do you have an answer for this? I have a counterspell. I'm like, I don't know. It really depends. Because it depends if it's hurting me or not.
All right. Our next trick we're going to move to is I didn't really know what to call this one either, so I called it secretly holding players hostage. It's pretty common knowledge in Commander that if you can get the table to a board state where you're holding one or more players hostage, that is, you have onboard abilities or spells or activated things that you can do to just kill them outright, that's a really good position to be in. A lot of times we'll see games evolve into the point where, like, everybody's in a similar position, but one person can kill any one player. That is a great position to be in, at least if you're asking me, because usually what happens is nobody wants to be the person who has to die first. So then you just get to keep all your resources, and now next time you untap for your turn, you can kill 2 players, and now there's no way anyone can stop you. So what kind of has to happen in this is for someone to sacrifice themselves for the greater good so that the other 2 players have a chance. And I think, in my experience, that really doesn't happen too often.
It really doesn't. People are pretty selfish when they play this game, and that's incredibly. It definitely makes sense because you have to be playing for yourself. There's this one example that I'm thinking of that we were playing in a Commander Masters draft, and I had double Fiend Lash on a creature, and I had someone like dead to rights. It's like, okay, well, if I do anything at instant speed because I have a way to trigger this person will be dead. So it's like, okay, swing out the rest, and I won't kill you right now.
Yeah, very easy to create situations, which is where I'm going with this.
This is a hostage situation.
We are creating the situation and nurturing the game to a point where we are going to hold people's hostages. And so we're going to slowly stack damage dealers over the course of the game. This is like our little strategy for this. We're going to slowly stack damage dealers over the course of the game, and it's kind of like how if you plop a frog into boiling water, it's just going to jump out. But if you put it in lukewarm water, it's a nice little bath, and then you slowly crank up the heat, and then before the frog even knows it, it's actually just dead. And that would be also your opponents.
I mean, this is a mind game as much as it's a strategy game with your cards. So you have to be playing the table as much as you have to be playing your cards.
Right, and we're not advocating for lying in any way. However, I do not have to tell you if you are dead to my stuff on board. I can just let this stuff sit out there and let you slowly figure it out. And it's up to you, honestly, to work with your teammates, which is actually your opponents, to work with everybody else to figure out if I'm going to win next turn. I can just sit there and go, yeah, I'm actually holding someone hostage. And then if it benefits me, I can then say, I've got enough damage to kill you if you try to come at me. And then that might dissuade them from it, which just leads you into the next point of, now I've got a chokehold on the game. And there's really nothing anybody can do. You see this all the time with like Zulapur Cutthroat plus Sack Outlet plus some number of creatures. That's a really common one. You said you had Fiend Lash and a way to damage your own creature. That could be one. But even just like, if we want to get simple, you're at 60 life, you got an Aether Flux Reservoir.
Yeah, there's other ways to do this too. For instance, I remember a really big game where I only had my Baloth on board, and he was like a 17/17, and this person had 16 life. They thought they were going to kill me, and they swung out at me. And I had like a fling in my hand. So it's like, okay, well, you swung out at me trying to kill me. I'll just kill you in response.
Yeah, just like how the last tip, I guess the way to combat the last tip would be sort of don't necessarily take everybody at 100%. And maybe if somebody asks you to kill a questionable permanent, you go, well, why? But for this one, I would say, you got to really keep an eye on those aristocrats, like Perforos decks, where you have to keep an eye on your life total and make sure that if there's a situation where somebody has to die, the table is informed of that. Because we, the players trying to use this trick, we're going to take full advantage of you guys being in the dark or not being on the same page with this. And then before you know it, it's too late. And then one last thing I want to mention about this particular strategy is Moxfield.com, because when you build your decks with Moxfield and Miso gets in the way of the camera, you're going to be at a higher percentage chance to win the game because you're just going to be more informed.
Miso, Moxfield, 2 awesome things, and you can build so many different types of decks on Moxfield. You can select alternate art for all of your cards if you want. So if there's one that looks a little bit like our kitty buddy over here, you can actually find that and select it as your commander.
Exactly. So Moxfield.com, the best place to be, period. Not whether you're online or not. Thank you, Miso. Okay, number 3, I want to move to, this is more of a Mia-centric tip that I don't follow at all.
Oh, BZ's so bad about this one. It's don't make eye contact during combat, but in that same vein, shut up during combat.
You gotta explain this one.
Sometimes it benefits you to shut up while opponents are making decisions because that is drawing attention to you. So the way I like to think about it, when all else is even, people are going to attack whoever's drawing the most attention. If everything is equal and no one has blockers or something, if you start talking, it's like, well, if you have a free attack right here, they'll go thanks. Attack you for 2. BZ does this a lot, and BZ's always like, you have a free attack, and then they go thanks, and then turn the creatures right on him.
Yes, I can attest to this one, and I am the person who would benefit the most from shutting up during combat. However, I just kind of don't. This is kind of in line with my first trick, well, at least what I mentioned during the first trick, is that I just kind of like, chugging commander games along, and I like pointing out when someone has a free attack because I think it'll help them down the road later. But for some reason, if somebody has a 2/2 flyer and I go, nobody has a flyer right now, I am like the person attacked by that flyer like 80% of the time, and I don't know if I could tell you why, but I think it just has to do with this little tip. It's just that I just am the last person to make noise, and they're like, oh yeah, hits you. It's like, oh, okay.
It's like, okay, I can attack. You are the person who last held my attention. I'm going to attack you because you are open for the most part.
Decision shortcut.
So it's like, my opinion on this is be as non-threatening and forgettable in combat. So if you have to point out, it's like, yeah, I have a Death Toucher, you probably shouldn't attack me. But in general, if I have nothing on the board, I am probably not making eye contact with you, and I'm probably not reminding you that you can attack me.
I have seen this where she's just sort of like, her posture changes a little bit when there's an important combat from somebody else, and she's just like, yeah, I mean, I guess I have cards in my hand. I guess I should look at them instead of like, alert, paying attention and like doing this. They're just she's kind of like,
I guess.
What's going on over there? Like, and it works. I feel like you get attacked way less than I get attacked. Even if you're playing like Atraxa Infect and I'm over here with like nothing, they'll attack me if I'm just like blabbing a little bit.
Well,
too
you
much.
just talk so much and you bring everyone's attention to you. The difference between BZ and I, one of them, is that I don't like being the villain at the table and BZ embraces it. But in that vein also, BZ attracts more attention to himself at the table, and I try and just kind of like chill out and hang by the wayside until I have my time to strike.
Yeah, I feel like I adopt like sort of a leadership role. And so I feel like this tip and our number one tip, the 80-20 rule, aren't really that compatible, because I think you could do what I do and sort of like try to take charge of a game and just kind of be like leading in directions, and then sometimes you lead them in a direction that you want to go and the game swings in your favor. But then there's also this kind of like passive role where you can be extra passive and you can slink away during the important decisions, and it's almost like you're not there for that, and then you just get to reap the rewards.
I also think that being a little bit passive tends to help me, because when I say, ooh, that looks kind of dangerous, I'm not calling it out to every permanent. So when I say, ooh, that looks pretty dangerous, people are usually taking that as like oh, you haven't really mentioned anything being too dangerous. That must be extra dangerous, because it's like Boy Who Cried Wolf, right?
Yeah, we have it on the script here, and I'll probably have Chris put up a screenshot, but there's an emote that we had for YouTube for a hot minute, and it's just me going, ah, and it's like, don't be a BZ. That's our number 3 tip in a nutshell, is don't be me constantly saying things, because you're just going to get slapped for it.
I mean, draw the most attention to yourself. That's where people's like targets are going to lock on.
Mm-hmm. What is our 4th tip, which is also a Mia created tip?
Our 4th tip is to be patient. Sometimes it benefits you to hold a removal spell for threatening permanents or engines, even to the point where it feels uncomfortable. There's a lot you can do at instant speed with removal, and you never have to be the only person removing things unless the rest of your group really doesn't run removal. And at that point, I'm not sure if I'd really want to hang out or play with those people, because it doesn't seem like a very fair role. There are multiple people in the game, and if you're not the only one running removal, it's not up to you to remove every single threat.
Yeah, the thing I've kind of been trying lately is in lower stakes environments where there is a thing that needs to die, some kind of problematic permanent, but it's not going to like win the game immediately. I like to just go, I am going to remove this if it's still in play, but I'm going to wait like 2 turns just so I can sort of get a feel for, because we do play with a lot of randoms at conventions and people who come up to us, and it's really fun. But I like testing the waters and just seeing, generally, if I just ignore something that is actually kind of threatening, how often will it get removed? And I think I've been pretty happy with the results of just waiting I would almost say too long, but then it ends up working, and then I feel like I didn't wait too long, if that makes sense. And obviously, if there's like some kind of monster thing out, like if there's like a Bolas' Citadel and they're going to try to go off with it, you should kill it as soon as possible, because that benefits you. But sometimes if it's a non-game ending threat, I like to just leave it. Sometimes there's an Elishnorn, and it's a problem for you, but you could play around it, but it's a hassle. Sometimes I just let that go and see what happens.
I try to only remove the things that are either hurting me the most or it's about to win the game. I'm trying to hold my removal and make everyone use their resources first so they have less answers to my things later, and so I can save my things for the things that are only hurting me or hurting me like so much out of proportion that I need to remove it.
And it feels pretty good because when this works, you end up sort of tapping an opponent's lands to cast an opponent's spell from an opponent's hand to remove something that you wanted gone in the first place. And when it works like that, the way I just described it at least sounds pretty freaking awesome.
It's just a matter of value, right? Like, we all run removal. We all need stuff removed to help us play the game. Maybe it's hurting someone else a little bit more than it's hurting you. You could do what BZ does sometimes and like point things out and be like, hey, that's really killing the table. And it could be hurting you just as much as it's hurting someone else. And they go, yeah, you know what? You are right. I'll kill it because it's hurting them too.
And sometimes you can combine those tips, right? You can say, hey, that's really a problem. Can we deal with that? While having an answer in your hand the entire time and just never dealing with it. But the fact that you called attention to it means that, it sort of moved up in the priority of people in their heads, and it will get dealt with eventually.
I do that so much. I run very heavy removal in my decks. My removal suite is usually, I'd say, better than most people's because I like running removal.
It's at least more robust.
Yeah, so I do like to call attention to it before I deal with it, unless it's something that I need to deal with right now, or else like my entire game plan gets shut down.
Yeah, because you see that happen where people will say, can anybody kill this? And they're going to kill it anyway. And sometimes I think you can just tell. I've had this with people I've played with, some people at my friend group, and I'm just like, you're going to destroy that artifact or enchantment. You're asking, but you've got 3 mana up, you have something, so forget it. And I like putting the screws to them a little bit and doing it myself if you can pull it off.
Sometimes you can bluff if you do have a little bit of time, though. Because, I guess I don't have anything. Guess we're all going to die to it. I've definitely done that a couple times.
Yeah, because when you wait, like, if you have 3 mana open, and they're like, no, you're just going to kill it. And I go, okay, go to my turn, draw a card. It's like, now what? Now the ball is in your court again.
So it does help to wait with your interaction because a lot of the interaction is instant speed anyways. And if you're running more flexible interaction like non-land permanent or just permanent in general, you might need to save it for something else. Like if I'm running a generous gift, I might need to save it for Field of the Dead. And it really sucks if I have to use it on like a Guardian
like
project
a creature
or something.
Or
Yeah.
All right, so our next tip is something I can only describe as the life total tiebreaker scam. Now, we already know that I talk a lot in combat. So I help people get free attacks, and I'm like always figuring out who can get damage in or whatever. If they miss it, if they go to their second main, I'm like, oh, you can attack this person if you want, or you can attack me, whatever. Do your thing. But people often like to use life total as a tiebreaker, as the main tiebreaker as to who to attack. So my little sentence for this rule is who you attack in the early to mid game should not be influenced in any way by life total. And so let's just use an example. It's turn 3. You have a 2/2 that can attack this turn. Your opponents are at 40, 40, and 41. Who do you attack? The correct answer, the only correct answer is not enough information. You do not have enough information on who to attack. Just because somebody's at 41 versus 40 versus 40 does not mean they are suddenly the correct player to attack. Someone playing like a gain land, that's just not something that should influence an attack. And I always see, well, you're at the highest, so I guess I'll just send it. It's like, whoa, that doesn't matter. I feel like life totals are just not that big of a deal when we can look at the deck strength, the deck type. What is your deck going to do, especially in the early to mid game? Sometimes players are at 1, and obviously their life total matters and is a determining factor in who you attack. But this is the early to mid game we're talking about.
There are decks that like to use their life totals for resource, and that should be taken into account. For instance, you should probably attack the person with Adnaz and Necropotence in their deck rather than someone who is just kind of like, oh, I don't know, big Stompy perhaps, because they're going to be using their life total for advantage.
But that is a different reason than simply attacking them just because they have the most life. That's a different thing. So not all decks are equal in the early turns. That's my big thing too, is some have a way of absorbing damage easier, or in the middle of the late game, they're going to be putting up blockers like no problem. If somebody has a tapped Field of the Dead and a couple extra lands in play, I don't care if they're at 35 and somebody else is at 40. I'm still going to jam at them. I feel like a lot of early damage is missed from people not doing this. And I think it's just like you spend an extra 10 seconds thinking about your early game combats, and I think it's going to pay dividends in the late game, because how many situations have we been in late game where somebody's at 5 and we just can't close? We can only deal 4 or 2 damage to them. And we're like, well, does anybody have 3? And everybody looks around and they go, no, but the 3 comes from these early turns.
I think that this is definitely a big deal. For instance, we were playing a game recently, and there was a big burn spell for 18, and the player life totals were like 17, 16, 20, and 21. They were all very close to the point where anyone who this was aimed at would functionally take them out of the game, whether literally or just like metaphorically, I guess. And so whether they're at 0 or 4, they're basically at the same, especially if you're at like 30 or 40.
Right, that person ended up shooting it at the person with the highest life total. I just think at that point it's just not a factor. I really struggle in this sort of context that we're painting it to find any reason that you should attack somebody just because they're at 42 or just because they haven't lost life yet. Like, obviously some decks, like we said, they can use their life. They have a Citadel, and they have, I have a Belladros Witherbloom deck that always wants to use its life. So me being at a high life total is bad in terms of like for the opponents, but that's the reason to attack me. And so then if I'm at 30, this has happened many times actually, and you can attest to this. I'm at 30 life. The other 2 people are at 35 and 36, and the person who with the free attack goes after the person at 36. But like, really, you need to just knock me down because I can gain so much life. But that's just like, I feel like this has hurt me in a couple of games where people attack me sort of for no reason because I have the most life, and it would have been better used on a different opponent, or it's helped me because I'm the person they should attack, but because I fetched and shocked, that somehow makes me less of a target.
I've seen this a ton too, because when I play Atraxa, I can kind of win out of nowhere. I have Vornaclex in there.
You have Poison and Proliferate.
I have Radstorm. I have a lot of ways to just end the game at instant speed. And BZ always attacks me, and a lot of people are like, no, she's at 25 while the rest of us are at 35, 40. Why are you doing that? And he goes, well, it's because she can win a lot faster than the rest of us can.
Yeah, I'm factoring in how many instant I win the game right now cards every deck has. It turns out when we're at 6 poison, all of the instant I win game cards are going to come from her deck. So it's like, I don't care that she's at 25. That is in no way indicative of how close to dead she is or how close to dead we are. She's about to win the game with any number of top decks. So I have to go after her. And I personally never use the life total tiebreaker. I attack whatever deck I think I'm going to get the least free hits in on later, or whatever deck has the most combos in it, that sort of thing. That's what I use.
Or whoever's just open.
Right, sometimes only one player is open, and obviously that's the free attack versus not doing it otherwise. But yeah, you know what? Petition for everybody at home. If you can only take one of these tips, I prefer you take all 5 because that's awesome, and I think they're going to help you. But please just stop randomly using the tiebreaker of the most life. I think just think about the decks real quick and think about who's got the most problems for you later.
But if you want to see more deck tips, how about you check out this video right here where we help you level up your game.